I put out a post asking for some good questions that I can answer here in my first Q&A video. And the first one is how to translate creative skills into real game fighting, plus BR fighting tips. And thank you for the amazing content. Firstly, thank you for the amazing comment and good question as well. This is a problem that a lot of people have, myself included, is like you go into build fight 1v1s, you go into creative, whatever it is, and you're booga. Obviously, that's how I play. But then when you go into like a tournament, or you go into arena or ranked or even pubs, you're just some cheeks. So the real difference between here, I think there's three main differences. The first would be input lag and delay. So, a lot of the times you play on your local servers. So, there might be like a 10 to 20 ping difference, which for the most part isn't really that big a deal. However, it adds up when you're in your timings, like say when you're trying to wall replace, when you're trying to grab floors and all of these other kind of things. So it's not like it's like a game changer, but it is noticeably different. So the first answer to that is you just have to actually play like some ranked, you have to play some tournaments, you have to get comfortably warmed up in that kind of scenario with that kind of input lag, rather than just playing only creative and then jumping into tournament and being like, wow, this feels horrible. The second is a lot of players aren't really practicing a lot of realistic scenarios. So a good example of this is if I'm just going to play 1v1 build fights. When I go into a game, well, there's going to be tons of other people third party and shoot me in the back. And I might not have built up the muscle memory and the mechanics to, say, protect my angles and really learn how to do that. So if you watch some of the best players of all time, they cover their angles so well to avoid getting shot in the back. And when they do get sprayed, they already know how to deal with it, with their positioning, with their mechanics. Because a lot of times, if you watch Peterbot as a good example, he gets sprayed in the back and he's able to like pickaxe a wall, turn around, hold a wall from breaking, from being shot behind him, turn back and keep replacing and pressuring. So it's like, as he's being third-partied, he's able to actually stop third parties at the same time. Sorry, as he's box fighting, he's able to stop third parties at the same time. So that's only muscle memory and things like that you actually build by playing game modes that have a lot of other players in it where you can be third-partied, aka, for the most part, regular ranked or a lot of tournaments. And that's why one of the reasons playing tournaments is so important. Even if it's like skin cups, rank cups, whatever it is, you just get way more experience. You don't have to play like boring ranked. The third reason, I actually realized there's four, but the third reason is a lot of times people aren't that good at fighting with low materials and in awkward scenarios, which again only happens if you actually end up practicing that through tournaments and through playing Battle Royale. And the fourth is that sometimes when you're just playing a tournament or in any other like BR mode or whatever, you just fight better players. So for the most part, you think you're worse, but someone's just pooing on you because they're much better than you. Or you're playing a team mode where there's multiple players dunking on you at the same time and you're just not used to it. So basically, the solution of how to carry over is to play more stuff that is similar to tournaments. Play more scrims, play more tournaments. Ranked sucks. I wouldn't recommend playing it that much at all. But even some creative maps, like the solo endgame map is really good, that you can practice like getting third parties and all that kind of things in there, and you practice your fighting skill there. But yeah, those are the three big takeaways. Those are the three ways you should mainly practice that. The difference is you're just not experienced in that avenue. Next question from Ultima2ID. Do pros intentionally choose drop spots together with others to avoid clashing early game? So basically what you're asking is, are pros teaming? Are they cheating? Are they coming up with ideas on how to land near each other and those kind of things? The answer to this is almost definitely, but you'll never really know what's going on to start with. So I will just say yes. It's not like every team is choosing a drop spot and they're going, okay, you land here, I land here, all these kind of things. I think the way that it more than likely works out is that the bigger, badder teams say, I'm landing here, and they'll tweet it. They're not going to ask other teams around them. Say on NA, you got Peterbot's team landing at Crime City. They're saying, I'm landing Crime City. They tweet about it. It goes out to the world. It goes out to the ether. And I don't think they necessarily sit and say, hey, by the way, you if you land near me, I'm not going to W key you. Or, if you land far away the other side of the map, you'll be fine, or anything like that. But I think what ends up happening for the most part is that teams end up landing near each other and kind of figuring out each other's strategies and which ways they can benefit from that. And in the most part, that ends up just being like trading surge. So of course, a big conversation over the last year, plus maybe a couple more months than that, was just surge trading and how many teams end up getting tags and then they're not knocking each other. And have they decided this beforehand that this is the way they're going to do it or not? And I think this is the way that more unfolds. Whether there's actually like a spoken agreement or not, like I've messaged you saying, hey, please land here. Sure, that'll happen sometimes. But I think for the vast majority of times, people are just going to land wherever they want and then kind of figure out outside of that, there are teams here who'll do this, little team there who will do that. Next question from Noe Schmoe. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Apologies if not. How do you know when taking height is the right call in an endgame? And who should you hold to make sure you never lose it? Answering the first part of that is how do you know when to take height? There's a few different methods. There's like so many different height retakes that you can really do. I think the easiest one I'll lay out to you is just like a simple chop out play. So the easiest way to actually do it in terms of like how to actually do this is whenever you get ahead in a moving zone. So if you're a high layer mid ground team, if you tarp to the front side or you've used some sort of rotation item and you're on a high layer, if you look up and see that high ground is choppable, then you can create a long tarp and 2 players stay at the backside and you can just spray them out and your other player who's at the front side can then try and build up and take height from there. So in terms of like timing or the right call, a lot of the times it's if you can get an advantage over them. So in this scenario that I described, where you're front side spraying out a backside team, you know you can take height from them because you've just chopped them. They're falling. You have the advantage. You're going to build up. That's going to waste so many of their materials. And if you're in a good position with your materials already, because you've played like a good earlier mid game, whatever that will be, then you know you have the material advantage, you can take height. Sometimes they're going to try and still psycho for it and fight you for it, but chances are you're going to have more materials. If you've chopped them, you're able to build up, you're already in the advantage position. However, the easiest way to know you have an advantage is just to see what they're building. Like, this is the most common way to do it, is just look up, scout. If they're in wood, they're in shambles because they've run out hard mats. So you know that if you spray them out or chop them, you can just freely take height. You don't have to fight them. They're not going to have enough mats to fight you back for it. Second part, who should you hold in order to make sure you never lose it? So the main thing is the second height teams. So anyone who's like relatively close to you, those are the people who are going to try and take it from you. You also have to be really aware of the teams who go to the front side, kind of as I mentioned before, of the teams who are going to spray you. The teams who are going to spray you are more than likely going to be teams who get to front side and loop back because they have the time to end up doing that. So basically, second height teams, teams at the front, and then also teams who are often just building in metal, because teams who are building in metal on high layers are often setting up in that position to chop you out specifically. Also, if they're building in metal, you know they have a ton of mats, so they're probably going to be the healthiest teams anyway, so it makes a lot of sense just to spray them. Cupjacks asks, what do you think about bringing back solo victory cups? Solo victory cups were cool because random people could win and you could get $100. Like, if I played a solo victory cup, there was a chance, a minute chance, I could win $100 and brag that I got some earnings and make a good funny tweet about it, right? But ultimately, I don't know if it's really beneficial for the game. Now, I think that allure keeps some people in competitive. Like, okay, there's this tournament you can play and you can maybe win money. And that kind of like falsely gives a lot of people hope they can earn. Obviously, a lot of people can, right? But there's kind of people below the skill level that will really ever earn. And they have this thought of like, if I play, I can just win. I can get earnings. I can keep going. And I don't necessarily know if that's actually healthy for the game or not. Like I said, I haven't looked at the numbers to see if switching to this current system is better or not. The one thing I'll say is a top 600 solo cash cup like it is now is not good because it kind of blends between the two. So what you would either want is you want solo victory cups where you can actually end up winning some money. As I mentioned before, there's a chance. But then you also want the higher level solos, a top 100 lobby. So it's like what we've got right now is in the middle of that. It's a top 600. So it's kind of giving people this opportunity and this chance to get into the top 600 and then to earn from there. But it's not interesting enough to watch in a high level because it's not all the same players in one lobby over and over again. So you're like in this middle ground between set lobby and victory cups that are open for everyone, where players are in here where you're not really going to be having a chance to earn if you're not good enough, but you're also not interesting enough to watch because it's not up here in the solo. I don't know what I just said there. Hopefully you understood what I mentioned. So do I think they should bring them back? I would say yes, because I like a lot of solo tournaments. Personally, I think there should be 2 solo cups a week rather than having so many trio cups. Maybe a controversial opinion, but I would love to have a solo victory cup one day and then a solo cash cup top 100 the other. And I think that's one of the best ways to get a lot of players interested in playing competitive, because it is hard to find a duo and a trio, and playing solo cups, especially victory cups, just brings, I imagine, would bring a lot of competitive players and would translate competitive players over. But I still really want the high level solos that's interesting, because solo victory cups, so boring to watch. so boring to watch. Like, that format was just so lame, I'll be honest. I love the fact that we have higher level solos now, so I don't want to get rid of higher level solos, but I do think there may be a potential that solo victory cups will be good for the game. All right, Jedi FN asks, when rotating an endgame, should you completely resist the temptation to shoot at enemies rotating and completely focus on getting ahead? Additionally, what are some different surge-based designs other than the main one? And Queasy seems to like two kind of different questions, but the first one, should you completely resist the temptation to shoot at enemies? No, you should shoot at every single person rotating. There is no reason why you should avoid shooting any player around you, right? If you have a max distance rotate and you see someone going, you should just shoot them. Why? Why not? Like, look, they're enemies. They're not on your team. Why would you work together? That doesn't make any sense. You want to damage them because then they have a higher chance of dying, and you have a lower chance of dying because you have not been shot. So in all honesty, in endgame, it's not actually that bad to resist shooting people. The worst thing you can do really is shoot players in maybe that first moving zone, so the 9th zone. Mid games and early games, like, that's when it really becomes a problem because you have a long distance to rotate. However, in end games, for the most part, you can just shoot someone because they'll build in front of you, and then because the rotate's so small, you can just kind of tarp over them. The problem with shooting everyone in mid game is that you get stuck in a cluster. Like, you're really far away from where you both need to rotate, but you've shot them, they're then going to shoot you, and then you're not going to rotate, and it becomes a bit of a cycle. But in an end game where you don't have to rotate as far, and the zones are already pressuring both of you out of that, like, shooting people on rotate is not that bad. If you've got your bat and you sprint jump and you pump someone as you go, it's like, it's not the end of the world, and I don't really see a negative to it unless you're right at backside and you're like fighting already against the edge of storm. Just focus on getting out of there, okay? But if it's actually in an end game specifically, there's not that bad of just like pumping players as you're rotating past. That's not that big of a problem. What are some tips for better aim? Love your videos. Thank you very much, Cuzzle2. Tips for better aim. The first thing I can really give you, which is also tips for better mechanics too, would be on your mouse grip if you're a keyboard and mouse player. The first thing is release the mouse. There are so many people who like, they tense and they squeeze their hand so much. In particular, when you're like in a stressed scenario where there's a lot of players shooting you, you'll notice you've like gripped your mouse super hard and tense. And that tenses up the muscles of your forearms, which makes it harder for your hand to move. Now, if you do this, next time you're playing, right, go into like a... into, I was going to say, like an aim duel practice map, or go into one of the like 1v1 aim duels or something like that, and tense your hand, like grip your mouse hard, and then try and aim. Then release your hand, like so it's loose, and then try and aim. You'll notice it's so much smoother. Like the way your crosshair moves is so much smoother if you just actually relax your hand instead. That's gonna be difficult because you're doing a lot of actions with your hand. Obviously, a lot of players have builds. You gotta shoot, you gotta aim, all those other things. But as you're spraying, just think about releasing your hand. You'll notice how much easier it is to actually aim. The second tip for aim is about crosshair placement I would give you, which is just always have your crosshair on the other player. Like if you're build fighting or box fighting, outside of like choosing an edit, there's almost no times. I was gonna say no times, but actually outside of when you're like turning away and building away from them or whatever. But for the most part, you can just keep your crosshair on the other player when you're building, when you're reloading, when you're shooting, basically whatever you do. And that means your aim is immediately going to become much better because you don't have to flick these massive shots or anything like that. So trying to keep your crosshair on, massive tip number 2. And tip number 3 is honestly just to play a little bit slower. Like one of the reasons why a lot of people's aim sucks is if they just like do these massive flicks like I mentioned before. But if you play slower, your movement will probably also be much better and you can think about what you're doing. And if you're in a box with someone, this is kind of a tip 4, but I'm blending it into the play slower. But when your movement is better, you can actually keep your distance away from players to a way that's actually easier for you to aim. So if you notice a lot of players, when they get inside a box, they run right up into someone's face and spray. But when you're really close to someone, when they move, you have to move your mouse so much, or your controller so much, to actually end up hitting. But if you stay like half a tile, 1 tile away from someone, if they move and sprint, you don't really have to move your mouse as far, making it easier to aim because they're not just flying past your screen at the same time. So playing slower will allow your movement to be a little bit better and stop running in people's faces, and your aim should be much better. Hopefully those 3 tips helped. Big Emilel. I never know how to pronounce this. I've seen your name a bunch. Hello. The 2 double L's are throwing me in this, right? How long does it take to make an analysis video? For example, can we say invitational vid? And what makes your videos the best of all time of effing comp creators in your opinion? I'm clearly choosing this question just so I can meat ride myself, obviously. Also, keep the good work. Best effing comp creator right now. Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. So I will go from meat riding myself to trying to humble myself in this comment, but I think the only thing that makes my videos better, quote unquote, than other Fortnite creators is that there's not many creators in Fortnite competitive that put effort into their videos. Like, that's it. I think my videos are cool. I love them. I try to put a lot of effort into them, but I compare a lot of my content to other games, other niches, other genres, and like my quality is nothing in comparison to a lot of people from like, if you play like Pokemon, if you play RuneScape, you watch some of their content, the effort, the thought, and the time that goes into some of that is outstanding. Like, there are just some other genres that are just crazy. So I think I make good videos, but I think what makes them stand out in the Fortnite space specifically is that there's not that much competition in the specific type of content that I do, if that makes sense. How long does it take me to make one? It depends. The Cami Set invitational video, which one was that again? Let me check. Oh yeah, okay, so the Cami, so I've checked. Cami Set, it was just a Mechanics to the Pros video, so that usually takes around a week. So my process now is like 2-3 days of researching, writing, which is like, depends what kind of video it is, but like watching VODs, studying, writing, doing all that stuff, and then I get the voiceover. I send it over to Nolar. I used to do everything myself, where I recorded all the clips in replay mode. Now I've got my boy Nolar doing on that, who's the GOAT. So he gets all like the base clips for me now, and then I do all the fancy edits, all the music, all that kind of stuff on top of that. So I spend around 3 days researching, writing for the most part, and then around 2 days after I get the draft back from Nolar, I spend another around usually 2 days editing. So for me, it's usually like 5 days a week. So that's why it ends up taking around 10 days for a video, because it needs, Nolar has to have some time, then I need to write the next video and all this kind of stuff. So that's why for the most part I upload like once every 10 days, because I spend around 5 days myself on them. That 2 days that Nolar spends doing his kind of draft sometimes probably take me 3 days. So it kind of just depends on the video, to be honest with you. But yeah, usually I'd say that's why I can pretty much not get one out every single week. There's a lot to think about. So yeah, around that amount of time. What made you want to be a content creator, and what is some small advice you give to a small one? So I will put both of these into the same, they are the same answer, to be honest. And that is just enjoying it and finding it fun. So if you're a small content creator, don't try to blow up to get tons of views and be super rich and successful. That'll be a disappointing career for the vast majority of people. Make content because making content's fun. You enjoy it. You enjoy the process. You enjoy the output, wherever it may be. That's why I do it. Because well, now it's also a job, right? But I got into it because I really love making content, and I found like putting a lot of effort and energy into something and building a product, which is the video, of course, was just very enjoyable. So that's what made me do it, basically. Monarchy FN says, do you think the skill gap with pros and sweats would decrease with more regions? No. That's a strange question. I don't think those two are that correlated. If anything, that would make it worse, because with more regions, the best players on that region would be fighting worse players. So say in an FNCS Grand Finals, the best players that are in that lobby are worse than the bottom players. So there's not as many mistakes they can make. So with less regions, to an extent, so say EU, that the larger the population of that region, the more the worse players are better. So the bottom tier players in the Grand Finals in EU are just better than the bottom players of any other region. That means that if you're in a lobby of that high quality, you can't make as many mistakes. You can't just like play a bad game and then W key a really horrible team and get yourself out of that bad position. Obviously, sometimes you can, but those kind of plays don't work anywhere near as much. That's why if you look at the smaller regions like Middle East, OCE, you know, the way that the top players, the tier 1 players play in those regions, it's just nothing like how the other regions play. And that's because they can just get away with like doing bad plays and then just fighting someone and winning because they're so much better at fighting. So would making more regions... Hold on, this is hard to answer. If there was more regions, so say you split up EU, for example, that would mean that the best teams in those regions would be facing worse players, meaning that they would be getting worse practice. So no, I think the skill gap with pros and sweats, too many double negatives in this question. The skill gap with pros and sweats reduce. Wait, you said that. That's what you asked. That was the question you asked. Yes. Yes. Oh my god, this is hard. Hold on. Yes, I think the best players would get worse practice. But to be honest with you, I don't think it would be massive difference. Like you said with Sweats as a good example. Like you would, in your average player, it wouldn't be that much difference. Like if you were facing someone in ranked. But I think among the top players, it would make a difference. Hope that makes sense. That was a lot of double negatives I had to think about there. How long can Peterbot stay this dominant in competitive? That is a very interesting question. I think that mainly, the main answer to that is it depends on his motivations, because, you know, he's locked in as from what it seems like, and it seems like he's playing all the time, seems like he's grinding like hell. It really just depends on, can he continue to do that for years and years and years. Right now, I mean, there's no player who seems to have the potential that Peterbot does, you know. I did see a tweet where they were saying that Peterbot is scared that Bolts has that potential. And I'll be honest with you, watching Bolts play, if he's locked in, he's an unbelievable player. I think he probably could maybe be on the level of a Peterbot if he truly locked in. But, you know, as an EU guy, it's a shame to say I don't know if any of the EU players even have the potential to do that. You know, the one that would come to mind obviously would be Vino, but if Vino was that locked in, could he be as good as Peterbot? I don't know. I don't know if I have the answer to that. So for me, like, Peterbot just seems to be either a genetic and hard work anomaly. Like, he's just locked in. He's just playing like mad. He's playing crazy all the time. He seems to be unbeatable in literally everything. It's like it's a trio format, and it seems like he's obviously not just carrying. His team are doing something, but it seems like you could put him with anyone and he would win FNCS. Or obviously he didn't win last season, but you could put him with me, him, and Poyo. I swear could probably win like a cash cup or a weekly finals. It's just unbelievable. So how long? I don't know. I think it just depends on how long can he keep it up. It's more, I don't think it's necessarily to do with other players like catching up at this point. Sure, he might have a genetic freak and an anomaly who'll pop out at some point who might be this good, but he just seems to truly have it all. And we could see this go on for years as long as he stays locked in. And he could be a very rich man by the time he's finished playing Fortnite. Where do you see the direction of Fortnite competitive going in the next 3 years? Do you think it will eventually die off? Cheating problem fixed? Major problem. I agree. Who will be the face of Fortnite at that time? So where I see the direction of competitive Fortnite going in the next 3 years is interesting. It's hard to say that I think it'll have a massive boom and a massive boost, kind of like it did with the OG season that came out, because I feel like Epic's played that card too many times already. So, you know, they played the OG card, which brought a bunch of people back, which really helped competitive because it spurred more people into the game. They then had the victory cups, which again translated some of that audience back in, I'm sure. You know, we saw a really good Chapter 5, I think a lot because of its fact that it started with the OG season. Then this year they did the OG with the remix, or say this year. Before this chapter, they did the remix season, which was really cool. I liked that season. I think it was fun. I think they put a good twist on Chapter 2, but it didn't bring back the hype and the nostalgia for a lot of other players to kind of boost the year off. You know, it didn't start on a real high and then managed to... It'll always drop off every year with a new chapter and all this kind of stuff, but it didn't start as high with Chapter 6 as it did in Chapter 5. So where do I see it going in the next 3 years? I think what's going on this year is very sustainable. I don't see it going up massively. I just think that if it stays the way it is this year, and like the numbers we're seeing, the kind of player counts, the way content is doing, all that, if that stays the same this year and as it will the next 3 years, I think we'll be in a really good position. Like, you know, I would love Fortnite to blow up even more, and every video I do gets millions of views because everyone's interested in competitive Fortnite. That would be amazing, and I hope competitive Fortnite grows so much. But I think we're at a sustainable level here, where if we are here and not growing, the esport is in a very good place. So I don't think it will die off, I'll be honest. Like, it would be really difficult for Fortnite to die off, genuinely. The game itself is just so massive, and it's already been around for so long, so to see it kind of fall off would be a real surprise. And it seems like keeping competitive players around is very good for Fortnite generally. Competitive players are the ones, you'll be surprised, who spend the most money. It's not your 8-year-old little cousin, it's competitive players. And the reason competitive players spend the most money is because they're the ones who play the longest. Like, if you've been playing since Chapter 1 like me, I would love to go back and check how much I've spent on skins, on V-Bucks. It'd be like way more than playing a £40 game or 50, 60, whatever. I mean, the Nintendo 2 or Nintendo Switch 2 games are going to be $90, $80 or whatever it is. So like, you definitely spent more than that on Fortnite generally. So keeping competitive players around is a very important part of Fortnite. And if Fortnite's going to be around for a long time, competitive will also be with it. So I think we're at a sustainable point. Interesting to see like where things go if there's not an OG season card to play again coming into Chapter 7, which I imagine will be next year. But Fortnite are always cooking up some crazy collabs and stuff like that. Like, I'm not really worried, especially since they have Blast locked into the broadcasts for the next few years. So yeah, I think the way it is this year is pretty sustainable. I would love to see it grow though. Will the cheating problem be fixed? Probably not. I don't think cheating is a problem that can be fixed. That's my personal opinion, because as I did in the last big cheater video I did on my main channel, the big problem with cheaters is that they're always going to be a step ahead. There's never a world where you're going to be fixing a cheater problem unless you do it on LAN. The cheaters will always find a way around an anti-cheat. They'll always find some way to get in, whether it's for like a long time or not. There'll be something in there, and then Epic will patch it, and then it'll repeat. So there'll be times where like there'll be a lot of cheaters, and there'll be times where there's none. There's just no way to fix that, right? Unless there's some crazy new anti-cheat technology that comes out in the future, I don't know. But my personal opinion, I think Epic Games are doing a good job now. Obviously, a lot of people disagree if you're in like finals and you see cheaters. The biggest thing that they can do to fix cheating is kind of what they're doing right now, where there's like a couple days between tournaments and then they have to go in and manually ban people. That's what they can improve at. But yeah, I think it is a major problem, but is it fixable, removable? No, I don't think it is. Who will be the face of Fortnite at that time in 3 years? I don't know. We've had faces that have lasted since the start. Like, say, Clicks has been around since, you know, World Cup Chapter 1. Mr. Savage, who had the world's longest retirement and is now back, still a face of competitive. You know, we're seeing new faces. Like, I was going to say new. Reason's not a new face, but in terms of being like a, well, he's not a new face in competitive, but as a face for competitive, I guess he kind of is for the German scene, who's like massive contributor. You know, you've got so many names that are like big creators in the space. So it's kind of hard to say who will be the face. It'll be someone who's probably creating content right now. I could see Clicks still absolutely being the face of competitive at that time. But if Peterbot continues his domination, he could just be that guy. I mean, right now, he's on every thumbnail. He is that guy. I don't know if you'd say he's the face of Fortnite right now, but the face of competitive, absolutely. So how well do you think EU/NA pros would place on each other's regions in grands if they were all on the same ping? Good question. I don't think it would be that much different. As I mentioned earlier, say with NA Central, there's a big problem with NA Central, right? In particular, and that is ping disparity between the top and the bottom players. So as I mentioned earlier in one of the earlier questions, like the bottom level of EU is really good. And if you look at a distribution of the servers are bang in the middle of EU for the most part, of where the population is, right? So you have the massive population in the center of the EU for the most part. So the average player is going to get roughly the same ping. Sure, you're going to have a lot of players who are on 0, but it's like 0 to 20 for the most part of like the biggest players who are in the grand finals. You're going to have people in Russia who'll be higher. You're going to have people who are in Finland if they manage to make it through. Sure, some people are going to go a bit over that. But for the most part, like, you're going to go 0 to 20 ping. When you're in NA, population density is completely different. So with any central servers being in Texas, the vast majority of the populations aren't far sides from that. So sure, you have a lot of the pros who are in Dallas, you know, who are in 0 ping, hard 0. Then you have a lot of other players who are in that in those grand finals who are on like 35, 40 ping. And you can just run through those players. Because A, they're probably not tier 1 players. But B, they're on higher ping and you can just replace their walls. Now, I want to stress this. Saying you're on 20, 35, 40 ping is high is not. If you're sitting there thinking, man, I would be the GOAT if I was on 0 ping, you're wrong. All these players have made it to grands on that kind of ping already. Just the point I'm making is, in a grand finals, the difference between 0 and like teams on 30 is pretty considerable in terms of like wall replacing. Like, if you were Peterbot, the fact that he's in Texas, definitely helping him right now. Let's put it that way, okay? But I think if, say, for example, you saw Peterbot's team go over to EU, yeah, they would absolutely win. Like, would they be as easy to win? Probably not. But, like, just think that they wouldn't win on EU would be insane. They wouldn't get the same respect. Like, would they get every uncontested drop spot every season? No, I don't think they would. You'd have some random French team contesting them who'd play like rats and would slow them down, but like they're still going to be in a place to win. And I think the same is true if you put some of the top EU teams. You put Queasy's team, you put Vino's team over in NA, like they're now in a chance to win that region. Would they dominate over the way Peterbot is? Hard to say. Like, as I mentioned, I still think Peterbot's team is the best, full stop. But yeah, if you're putting the top teams in a grands over to other regions' lobbies and they're on the same ping, like yeah, they would still be good. I think still win, obviously. If you could select any 3 pros right now, what would be the best possible trio? And what if you could choose any ever in their prime? So I'm going to just spell a myth here. People talk about players' primes. Most people's primes are not because they fall off. It's because other people get better faster or they don't improve. So take Mongrel now. You say prime Mongrel. You think prime Mongrel. You think like Season X. You think maybe World Cup. But he's better now than he was then. Like, if you watch any of his gameplay, he is better now than he is then. It's just that other people weren't as good. So when I'm saying, if I want to choose anyone in their prime, like, I'm going to be choosing players now. I'm choosing players now because most people are in their prime. Unless they, like, quit. Say, like, you could say Benji Fishy, for example, in his prime. If he kept playing, he would be... Who knows what he'd be like? He'd be insane at this point, I would imagine. But him in his prime is, like... probably way worse than a lot of the tier 2 players are now because it was so long ago and the game has developed so far. So I'm probably not going to look back and choose anyone in their prime. 3 pros, I'm taking Peterbot and Poyo. Like that's it. Like, I'm putting those 2 together. In terms of like the most insane duo, the chemistry, like those two are going together. You got the insane fragger, he can lead. You got Poyo, who's the best support player, and he sets Peterbot up and he allows Peterbot to go into these kind of positions. And then the question is like, who's going to be the third? That's an interesting question because obviously they tried with Cold and they were doing insane, and then unfortunately had to end up splitting up because of the whole fact they didn't play together last season for whatever reason. I think it would either have to be Cold, who they've already played with, or maybe Veno. I think Veno would fit really well into that team as well, bring some like ideas. And I think if you just let Peterbot lead and you've got Poyo supporting alongside Veno, like, I think that would be an unbelievable trio. We'll see what the chemistry would be like. That might be a problem. You've got some strong personalities that might clash in there. I also think it might be a problem. Veno, I know he's not on his grind as such. He's like just playing enough to be good to win. He's not like in the mindset of trying to be the best player anymore. And that might clash with Peterbot's get on and grind, play scrims, play tournaments, kind of mentality right now. But maybe, I mean, hell, if you're playing with Peterbot, you'd probably be motivated to play because the money would be rolling in, the success would be good. I'm sure the game would feel so easy. So it would be one of those 2 trios, I would say. What is the smallest thing that has a rather large effect that average players aren't fixing that is costing them in competitive tournaments? Good question, Sad. I think not slowing down. This is kind of the answer I gave to one of the other questions earlier on, but everyone just rushes. Everyone just thinks so fast or tries to do everything so fast. And they get so careless. They get so sloppy. Take a second to sit and to breathe. See what's happening around you. Like, you don't have to edit every wall. You don't have to shoot every shot. Like, if you're in the middle of a fight and you just slow down, you will have a good angle to take a shot. You will come up with one. You'll find an opportunity. You won't just edit in someone's face. Taking that like 10-20% slow down effect will help you so much in the long run. I can absolutely guarantee you. This is like the biggest thing I ever see. You just see like a good player make a bad play. It's nearly always that. They're just reacting. Like, they weren't thinking about what they were doing. And for the most part, you can afford the time. Like, if you're in a high grand finals level situation, okay, you know what? You need to be fast on your feet. You need to figure out the situation. You need to go. But if you're like an average player, the players aren't that good. Trust me, they're not. And if you're an average player as well, you're all on the same level playing field. They're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. So trying to minimize your mistakes by playing slow and actually thinking about it will help you so much. Cool. First Q&A done on the channel. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you have comments and questions you want me to answer, put them down below. Don't know when the next Q&A will be, but I'll use comments from this one, or I'll make another post if it's like 3 months from now. Who knows? Like, subscribe. Peace. Bye.